Great, thank you, Daniel. Or would I say Leiri? I prefer Leiri. For having me here, my name is Benjamin May Ungwa, and I am son of Southern Kaduna, Kaduna State, Nigeria. My hometown is in Lakehead, and I'm here presently in Kaduna in Southern Tertiary. What I do at the moment, I teach formally. What I do formally, I teach at the university, Lakehead University, in the political science department. Lakehead is in Ontario, in a place called Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada. Yeah. Interestingly, last Sunday we celebrated our 20-year anniversary, graduating from secondary school. I went to St. Joseph's Minor Seminary in Zaria. So I'm actually here with my classmates. Some of them are outside and I'm here. So 20 years ago I graduated from the minor seminary. I went to the minor seminary because my dad had wanted to go to the minor seminary, and for some reason, but this is his story to tell, I think Father Nkajay provided him with scholarship at the time. He had secured admission to St. Joseph's Seminary, but when Father John Haverty came calling, he couldn't resist the government scholarship. So I think he had this covenant with God that his children will go to the minor seminary. But to be honest, he didn't even have to convince me, because at the time, you know, my brother would come back sharing tales of how he's been chiseled into being a proper man at SJS. And so of course, I naturally felt the calling at the time to attend St. Joseph's Seminary. So that was what got me to SJS and completed 20 years ago, and here we are. I would prefer to discuss about that, the different setting.
Right.
But yeah, from SJS, I think what you were, I guess, hinting at is the fact that people who go to the minor seminary naturally, like you used the term, ascend to the major seminary. And indeed, that was part of the rationale for establishing St. Joseph's Seminary in 1964, you know, that it would be a breeding ground, so to speak, you know, for priests. But over time, I think those who graduated in the 70s, in the 80s, and maybe in the early 90s, a lot of them ended up in the major seminary, and many of them, you know, became priests. We have notable priests today, including, you know, Bishop Kuka, and so on. But for many of us, we attempted and couldn't go further. But indeed, we were also told while in school that, you know, it's not all of us that will end up becoming priests. So we aspire to become lawyers, engineers, medical doctors, and so on. So here I am as a professor of political science. I think from quite a young age I had wanted to be a teacher, and I started teaching at Catechism, Hausa Catechism precisely. I was more affair with the Hausa language growing up than English. I felt more comfortable in it. So teaching at the Catechism kind of inspired me, and I want to shout out to my Catechism teacher that gave me the opportunity to do. I had something to render to the institution, you know, and also because I needed the job, you know, at the time. So I was close to the dean, and when the opening came, he reached out to me because I have reached out to him even before then, and it was unheard of to employ someone as a lecturer at a university with just undergraduate, you know. So a lot of people you would imagine, the board of directors were against the move. But because he had the final say, the oversight over such matters, you know, he got me in. So at that age, the age of 25, being a young lecturer, I remember when it was graduation and I had to put on the gown and march on and sit on the stage, you know, and look at the people I studied with, You know, it was surreal for me. In fact, even some of my friends that were there, they were like, they couldn't believe it. So that experience alone, I think, was what really inspired me to take it on. That I only had my undergraduate then, go ahead, do your master's, and I went on to do a master's in conflict transformation. Shortly after my master's, I got a scholarship from South Africa to proceed to Japan. So throughout my studies, and I think this is very key to my, would I say, success academically, I always knew that God blesses people differently. And one of my gifts was my intellect. So from that age, whether from high school, I wasn't necessarily the most outstanding student, but I knew that I had something I could use. So I felt if I could, focus on this. One of my friends is in Harvard now. We used to joke that, we can't use our hands to do anything. So let's use the thing that God gave us. If I could focus on my intellect and maybe see to what extent I could really improve on it, then maybe I could go places. So I didn't joke with my studies, even when things were difficult for me. And there were difficult times. There were terrible, terrible times that you go without eating, right? And times that you go without paying your fees and so on. There were those times. But one thing kept me going, that I had to keep my eyes fixed on the goal. And the goal was that I had to graduate first class, right? Because I knew that was the key that will open the floodgate of success in the academia, for me, and that was what happened, luckily for me. The other thing was that I knew I didn't have the money, so I needed the scholarships, right? And so by focusing on my studies, I could get a lot of scholarship. And so I was acquiring, and I had a lot of people, like-minded people, around me at the time. And I have to give a shout out to Professor Daniel Abigua, Victor Nduka is now in Australia, Daniel is at Harvard. These were people I lived together with, these were people we were dreaming with, right? So when he left for Cambridge, and subsequently I left for the United Nations University in Japan, where I did my second master's in development, sustainability, and peace. And afterward, I knew that it wasn't enough. I knew that I couldn't stay in South Africa, I couldn't stay in Japan. I wanted to explore the world. I wanted to study in so many places, right? So from Japan, I decided that I should venture to North America. And at the time, I got an offer at, I think it was Aberdeen in the UK and University of Manitoba in Canada. I wasn't really particular about Canada. And so I threw dice to decide my fate, because I remember I was so confused, where to go, because if I had gone to the UK, I would have spent 3 years and finished my degree. In Canada, it was 6 years, because they had a coursework component to their PhD. So one of my friends said to me, do you believe in dice? You can just write Manitoba and Aberdeen in 2 sheets of paper, just throw it and pick one and go with it. And that was what I did, and ended up at the University of Manitoba in Canada, where I did peace and conflict studies. So while I was doing my master's, I remember in Japan is a beautiful place. Yesterday I was watching my graduation ceremony with my parents, and I was just thinking of my experiences there. I did not really make the most in terms of adventures, but I made the most in terms of my academic work. I think that was where I prepared myself for what I'm doing today. That was where I was able to write all the articles, because I think at the time I was infused by this idea that you either in the academia publish or perish. So at that time I needed to publish as many articles as possible. So when people would come and ask me, let's go for a walk, let's go to this mountain, to that temple, to this province and that, I would rebuff, those invitations, just because I was bent on writing articles. But those articles eventually paved the way for me when I was looking for jobs, teaching positions in Canada, because I knew at the time that teaching was what I would do. It was where I would end, and so I took it seriously during my master's in Japan. Did my PhD in peace and conflict studies, got a teaching position while doing my PhD, Manitoba Institute of Trade and Technology, which helped me to finish the program, but also to garner experience. as well as the University of Manitoba. And shortly after, I was again presented with two opportunities, to go to the UK or remain in Canada. I got a teaching assistantship at Durham University in the UK, one of the top universities, and also I was working with one of my someone who inspires me in the field of peace and conflict studies, Roger McGinty. So it was quite fascinating that he was my supervisor. And I was leaving for the UK. I got my work permit, and then this position opened up in Thunder Bay in political science. I had, packed my bag, sold my things, gave out a lot of things, ready to leave Canada again for the UK. But God had a different plan. In fact, when the position opened up in political science, I actually didn't know. I was just applying for the sake of it. But I was like, I'm coming from peace and conflict studies. There was no way I was going to be offered a position in political science. But you know what? I would apply anyway. So I applied for it, and the rest, they say, is history, right?